former ISIS bride, now happily remarried in the US state of Texas, claims she is completely rehabilitated and that Shamima Begum, an ISIS bride asking the UK to let her return from Syria, should be given the same chance. 35-year-old Tania Joya says she was radicalised when she moved to Barking, East London when she was 17. She married her first husband in a Sharia ceremony after meeting him on a matrimonial website in 2013. The couple lived in California in the United States before moving to Syria after a stint in Egypt's capital, Cairo. After begging her husband, he took her to the border so she could escape, and she now lives in suburbia with her new husband in the US, and they have 4 children. And Tania Joya joins me now. Tania, great to have you with us. Talk us through your story. What was the turning point for you once you got to Syria that you begged your husband to take you to the border to escape?
The turning point was when he took me there to begin with. That was the line at the end of the marriage. I couldn't handle it anymore. And for many years beforehand, I was struggling with my religion, and it became very confrontational between me and my husband because we had very different ideas and plans. Since 2011, he wanted to go to Syria, and I was holding him back. And I was always telling him that the children are our responsibility. So he had a lot of pressure from the Muslim community to divorce me and go fight, but I don't think he wanted to break up the family, so he just decided he's going to take us to Syria, even though he knew I didn't want to go, especially while I was 5 months pregnant. I didn't want to take my children to a war zone, of course, so he knew, since he was, we had a Muslim patriarchy in our family, he made me very dependent on him. He was really in charge. Like, when he took me to Turkey, I didn't know where I was exactly, and it was just a lot of the times I think maybe I was in denial about what he was doing because I didn't want to think he would do that to me and the children, lie to us or lie to me and just put us in danger that way. And then when it happened, I knew that he was no longer a good father, and I was afraid for the children, so I had to leave.
So what I'm hearing you say is that you didn't want to go to Syria in the first place, but you've got a case like Shamima Begum, who in fact chose to go there of her own volition, and you're saying she should be given another chance and be allowed to come home to the UK despite showing no signs of remorse. Why is that?
Well, I believe she is young enough to learn. And I know that she was groomed when she was 15, which is a really vulnerable age. And from her background, where she came from, Bethnal Green, it's a working class migrant community where maybe I believe that I used to hang out there when I was a teenager because I had family living there. So I understand the mindset that she was in when she was 15 years old. And she thought she was being a good girl, a good human, and a good believer by obeying God. And then the ISIS propaganda sucked her in to make her stop respecting the rule of law and believing in man-made law, and she wanted a theocracy. So I understand what she went through, and she was so young. And then since she's been in Syria for the last 4 or 5 years, she's not been able to think any differently. She hasn't had access to education to teach her about secularism or humanism and human rights. So we know that she hasn't had the opportunity to grow and learn from her mistakes. I think she just can't think for herself right now.
All right, but she did in fact say that part of, as you call it, the ISIS propaganda, which involved watching beheading videos and videos that she called it about the good life, as well as watching the fighting, which was the reason that she became religious and decided to go to Syria. So talk us through that. What's the appeal in joining ISIS?
I think the propaganda was so slick, and she was a teenage girl who wanted to find romance abroad. I was of a similar mindset when I was a teenager, thinking the grass is greener on the other side. And you know, with the videos, I don't know how she can not be fazed by the beheadings. I don't even like to see animals being killed. You know, I don't even like to see raw meat. So I don't know how she can justify. I think it is a result of her PTSD, where she's been told that and also her religious indoctrination, saying that she really believes that you have a real life in the afterlife. Like after you die, that's when life begins. This is not real. The life of this world is only temporary and a dream. And she's living in a fantasy, delusional world. But that's because of the religious indoctrination that she's been fed. And I believe that if, you know, we're better than ISIS. I don't think that if we abandon her and her child in Syria, it's not going to help the UK, and it's not going to help Europe or anyone, because she could just go to another group of extremists and raise her child that way to hate the West.
But of course there's a lot of fear there in allowing her to come back to the UK with beliefs like that you say are deeply entrenched in this indoctrination. With that level of fear, talk us through how the rehabilitation process works, that people in the UK would feel that she's no longer a threat.
Well, first I'd like to point out that there are 400 ISIS members who have already moved back to the UK before Shamima. So there's an article in The Guardian, it was released in 2017. So we haven't heard about those former ISIS members, and they haven't committed crimes, like they haven't done terrorist attacks. So I don't really know why Shamima Begum is going to be excluded when all those other people, we don't know their stories, we don't know how remorseful they were, we just know that they've settled back in to society. So I do believe maybe some prison time would be good for her, but I also know that the prison systems don't have rehabilitation or de-radicalization programs available, not in the US anyway. Maybe in the UK they do.
It's certainly not as simple as them just settling back into the community, but I want to ask you, there are civilian women with children who are fleeing the fighting in Syria, who have nowhere to go and are stuck in these displacement camps, just like Shamima. But this is not by their own choosing. Why should people who made the choice to go be granted an opportunity for salvation, that women who are destitute by no fault of their own have to just accept their fate?
In a lot of these girls were still children when they were brainwashed, and now they have children. So they're overgrown kids with babies, and we can't deny their children who are British and US citizens the right to come back to their home country, to their nation, that they have rights to live here. For all the with the camps, I mean, these refugee camps are not even a safe place for the refugee women who did choose to be there. It's a breeding ground for extremism. Shamima is a lot of these Westerners, they get bullied in the camps by Russian and Tunisian ISIS members to stay religious and to keep covering up. So they don't have room to grow there. And we should help our citizens. We can be better than them. I mean, I personally know, as being an ex-Muslim, Shamima would probably want to see me killed. I understand that, but we can show that we have much better values than that. We are not draconian murderers. We're bigger and better.
But just finally, minors who commit crimes, for whatever reason it might be, they're persecuted for it. So how is this different?
No, I think she needs to go through due process. But I mean, it's the same for anybody who goes to prison, a white nationalist or anyone who's using politics and violence to get their message across. They need help in prison, or they need to. People change, and statistics show that people who've broken the law after 27 years old, their attitudes change. So we just have to. I mean, we can't just abandon her. It's not I don't think it's ethical.
All right, Tania Joya.